Fixing a broken life might be as simple as following 5 rules from history's greatest swordsman. Miyamoto Musashi used these rules to rise from despair, and they could be your blueprint out of rock bottom. Here's rule number 1. Accept life as it is. This sounds almost too easy, but picture the legendary samurai at 17 years old. In the year 1600, Musashi fought in a war, the Battle of Sekigahara, and his side was utterly defeated. He was on the losing side and forced to flee for his life. Everything he knew, his clan, his security, was gone overnight. That could break anyone. But instead of denying reality or drowning in self-pity, Musashi embraced the harsh truth. He accepted that his world had changed forever. Why is this so powerful? Because acceptance is the first step out of despair. Imagine your own life falling apart. Maybe you lost your job, your marriage, or your sense of purpose. The more you resist or deny what's happened, the more it hurts. Musashi realized that you can't begin to rebuild if you're still fighting the old reality. As one account explains, life will have its struggles. You cannot change that fact, but you can change how you interpret them. In other words, stop kicking against the bricks of the wall that fell on you and start looking for a way out from under the rubble. Musashi accepted his defeat as a lesson rather than a permanent curse. He told himself, "This is where I am. Now what can I do next?" What if the key to fixing your broken life isn't fighting it, but accepting it? Musashi's life teaches us that the moment you accept your reality, you regain power. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you start asking, "What now?" That shift in mindset is liberating. It stops the bleeding. Musashi's acceptance of defeat set the stage for his comeback. He regrouped, learned from his failures, and prepared for the next chapter of his life. But acceptance alone wasn't enough to pull him out of the darkness. After accepting reality, he had to be very careful about what he did next. And that leads us to Musashi's rule number 2, which addresses a dangerous trap many fall into when life falls apart. Do not chase pleasure to escape pain. When your life is in pieces, it's tempting to escape into easy pleasures, binge eating, drinking, mindless entertainment, anything to numb the pain. Musashi's second rule warns against this. Do not chase pleasure. In his time, that meant not indulging in excessive comfort or luxury for its own sake. For us today, it means don't try to bandage your despair with fleeting pleasures. Musashi knew that chasing pleasure is like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It only leaves you more parched in the end. In fact, one interpretation of his teaching says, if you're constantly chasing pleasure, you cannot be in the present moment. You become a slave to craving, desperately running from one distraction to the next and never actually fixing the underlying problem. After his defeat, Musashi could have easily given up and sought comfort. He could have joined a wealthy lord's household for an easy life. He did the opposite. Musashi embraced a life of intentional hardship to forge himself anew. He wandered as a ronin, often living in the wild. He even avoided baths at times so he'd never be caught unarmed, according to legend. That's how seriously he rejected luxury. Instead of pleasure, he chose purpose. Each day was about training, learning, and honing his swordsmanship, not chasing tavern delights. It was this Spartan discipline that enabled him to climb out of despair and become stronger than ever. Now think about your life. When things go wrong, do you seek comfort or do you seek growth? It's a hard question. Musashi is challenging us. Endure a bit of discomfort now so you can escape the greater suffering later. If you resist the urge to lose yourself in Netflix marathons or junk food or other quick fixes, you create space to confront your issues head on. Yes, it's painful to face life without anesthetic, but that pain can fuel your transformation. Musashi basically said, pleasant things are only useful when they come naturally, not when you run after them like a hungry wolf. Chasing pleasure will only distract you from the real solution. By abandoning obsessive pleasure seeking, you reclaim control. It's like a reset for your soul. You clear away the fog of temporary highs and see your situation clearly. But once you do that, another challenge appears. You're left face to face with your raw emotions, fear, anger, sadness. How do you deal with those without falling apart? This is where Musashi's third rule comes in, giving us a strategy to master our emotions when life is broken beyond belief. Rule number 3, control your emotions. Don't act on impulse. Emotional chaos is a common side effect of hitting rock bottom. One moment you're furious at the world, The next, you're overwhelmed with sorrow. Musashi understood that acting on these impulsive emotions only makes things worse. In fact, he flat out said that acting on an impulsive emotion is wrong. This is a direct contradiction to modern advice like follow your heart. It's a bit of a shock. Musashi believed following one's heart was wrong. Why would he say that? Because decisions made in extreme emotion are rarely wise. As that rule explains, sudden feelings are often not well thought out. When your life is shattered, your heart might urge you to do all sorts of drastic things, quit everything, lash out at loved ones, or even hurt yourself. Musashi's advice: pause. Don't trust knee-jerk feelings. Regulate them with reason. To illustrate this, consider Musashi's most famous duel against Sasaki Kojiro. Musashi showed up hours late, which infuriated Kojiro. By the time Musashi arrived, Kojiro was seeing red with anger and impulsive emotion. In that state, Kojiro made mistakes, and Musashi, who stayed calm and strategic, defeated him with a single blow. This life-or-death victory was only possible because Musashi controlled his emotions while his opponent did not. Now, you might not be fighting sword duels, but the principle is the same. If you let panic, rage, or despair drive your actions, you're likely to make your situation worse. Acting in anger might burn bridges you need. Making decisions in deep sadness might close off opportunities. Impulse is the enemy when your life is broken and fragile. Musashi's rule number 3 is essentially about self-mastery. When you're at rock bottom, practice stepping back from your emotions before you act. Ask yourself, am I about to do this just because I'm upset right now? If yes, give it a day. Give it a week. Cooler heads will prevail. Musashi advises that some things require 100% conviction, and if you feel unsure or clouded by emotion, you should take a step back to rethink your plan. This doesn't mean suppress what you feel. It means don't be ruled by it. Feel it, understand it, but then let reason guide your next move. This calm approach will prevent you from digging a deeper hole while you're trying to climb out of the one you're in. By controlling impulsive emotions, you regain clarity. But even with clarity, there's another trap at rock bottom: becoming consumed with your own misery, seeing yourself as the center of all the pain in the world. Musashi learned he had to get out of his own head to truly move forward. This brings us to his 4th rule, which shifts our focus outward. Rule number 4, don't obsess over yourself. Gain perspective. When life shatters, it's natural to curl up in your own pain and think, why is my life so awful? Musashi's 4th rule cuts through that self-obsession. Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. In simpler terms, don't be self-obsessed. This isn't saying your problems don't matter. It just means you're not the only one with problems, and the world is much bigger than your pain. By zooming out and seeing the bigger picture, you ease the oppressive weight of personal tragedy. The more you fixate on yourself, the more you blind yourself to solutions, opportunities, and the support around you. Musashi, after countless victories in duels, could have developed an ego the size of Mount Fuji. Instead, he sought humility. He studied philosophy, calligraphy, painting. He looked deeply at the world beyond himself. There's a story that in his later years, Musashi spent time in a cave writing the Book of 5 Rings, meditating on strategy and life. In that solitude, he wasn't wallowing in, oh, I'm so great, or, oh, I'm so broken. He was analyzing the deeper principles of the world, and by taking his ego out of the equation, he saw truth more clearly. That mindset is key to rebuilding a broken life. Step outside your own head, and you'll realize that your failures or heartbreaks, no matter how consuming they feel, are not the end of the world. Life goes on, and so can you. Try this. Shift your focus outward. Instead of, I messed up my life, I'm doomed. Ask, what can I learn from this that might help someone else? Or, what's happening in the world that I can still be part of? Service to others, learning new skills, even just appreciating nature or art can snap you out of your mental doom loop. Musashi's rule shows that perspective is a powerful healer. When you think lightly of yourself, you stop treating every failure like a personal indictment and see it as just one event in a much bigger story. When you think deeply of the world, you gain insight and inspiration beyond your personal bubble. That lightness of self also makes you resilient. like bamboo bending in the wind instead of snapping under pressure. By abandoning self-obsession, you reconnect with the world and see possibilities again. You realize you're not alone in suffering. Others have been there and conquered it. This opens the door to hope and direction. And speaking of how we relate to others, there's one more poison that can seep in when your life is broken: jealousy. It's easy to look at people whose lives seem perfectly in order and feel bitter. Musashi had a rule for that too, a final principle to guard your mind as you rebuild. Never let jealousy poison you. When you're at rock bottom, seeing someone else's success or happiness can feel like a punch in the gut. You might think, it's not fair. Why do they have it so good while I'm here struggling? Musashi's fifth rule is blunt: never be jealous. It isn't just moral advice, it's survival wisdom for a broken spirit. Jealousy is corrosive. It eats away at you, not at the person you envy. When you're busy comparing yourself to others, you're actually robbing yourself, using what little energy you have left on resentment. Look at Musashi's journey. After his early defeat, during his lonely trek to become a master, he must have met plenty of people with more wealth or higher status than him. He could have grown jealous, but that would have drained focus from his own path. Instead, Musashi stayed laser-focused on self-improvement, grateful for the skills and life he still had. Comparing yourself to others only fuels unhappiness. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the antidote to envy. Musashi thrived on his own terms because he refused to covet someone else's life. He was too busy elevating his own. Now think about your situation. Maybe your friends seem to have it all: stable jobs, happy families, nice homes, while you're picking up the pieces. That envy is natural, but Musashi is telling you to let it go for your own sake. Every second you spend resenting someone else's life is a second lost improving your own. And remember, you only see the surface of their story. For all you know, they have struggles too. Rather than letting jealousy drag you down, use other people's success as proof that climbing back up is possible. And count your own blessings, no matter how small. Maybe you have a supportive friend, decent health, or just the determination to keep trying. That mindset creates hope. With jealousy purged from your heart, you can fully focus on your comeback. Each of one of these rules creates a small shift. Acceptance replaces denial. Discipline blocks empty distractions. Reason diffuses raw impulse. Perspective broadens beyond the self, and gratitude halts the poison of envy. Layer them together, and the pieces of a broken life become building blocks for something unbreakable.